This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. This has been a wild week for the UK, and in many ways, it's exactly what needed to happen. With President Donald Trump's state visit around the corner, the timing could not be more perfect. Trump is definitely watching closely what's unfolding in the UK because the lessons there carry straight into America. The Online Safety Bill, along with the EU's Digital Services Act, have now proven themselves for what they always were: tools designed not to protect children, but to erode constitutional freedoms, choke dissent, and hand unelected bureaucrats control over the flow of information. Congress made it clear this week these laws are not about safety. Now, I strongly recommend, if you haven't already, watch my previous video, either as a refresher if you remember the events, or as essential context if you weren't following this saga back in 2021. It's important to revisit, especially since Meghan and Harry are working hard to act as if none of it ever happened. And I'm talking about the military-grade censorship operation that they have been running the past 6 years. In this video, we're going to talk about the origins of how this all started, meaning the targeted attack campaigns on innocent, unsuspecting people. And this new information might give us a little bit of insight as to who is actually backing this woman that we're calling Meghan Markle. Now, from what I recall, because at that time I was not really paying attention to what was going on with Meghan Markle in 2019, but apparently people started to scrutinize Meghan's bump, especially after that January outing that she had where people claim that this bump had dropped to her knees. Yeah, I vaguely remember that stories were being leaked of Meghan's bad behavior, as well as people scrutinizing whether or not Meghan was really pregnant. Yeah, and I also remember that there were a lot of stories coming out about how terrible Meghan's behavior was, and staff quitting on the Sussexes, especially the story that happened in Fiji with one of her aides in the car crying. We also had a rumor of the Queen telling Harry that Meghan couldn't have what she wanted as far as the tiara that she wanted to wear. I mean, there were all kinds of stories that were coming out. And then I think the straw that broke the camel's back for Meghan was the criticism that she faced when she came back from her lavish baby shower. I mean, all of Britain were turning their noses up, saying how vulgar she was to go and spend so much money in New York to show off like that. You know, it really wasn't a good look for her. Now, part of me thinks that all of this had been planned. I think the fake pregnancy was probably one of the biggest disinformation campaigns that Harry and Meghan were running, in my opinion. You know, a lot of the things that Meghan did was to provoke the public to respond and to react. She knew that she was being controversial in everything that she did. And I do think that to a certain extent, it was all to build up this narrative and create the optics of Meghan being hounded by the media and they were being so racist. And for her to come back and be this social justice warrior and fighting for a safer online space, I think that was the narrative that was crafted. I think it was always the narrative that they had in mind to use in order to drive this censorship. In my last video, I talked about the royal family website updating and putting up their social media community guidelines, and that was done on March 4th, 2019. Keep in mind that Sarah Latham joined the Sussexes around that time. 3 days later, Max Foster from CNN puts out that he investigated the racist abuse targeting Meghan Markle on social media. Now, this was the same journalist that was told to pull his piece that he did on Harry and Meghan after the Oprah interview, where he called out Meghan's 17 lies. I believe he was forced to re-edit the piece because Harry and Meghan didn't like what he had to say. So here is the quote-unquote investigation that Max Foster had reported on.
One of the most talked about women of our time. A fashion icon.
The winner this evening is Claire Waite-Keller.
And role model, earning her this homage from pop royalty. The Duchess of Sussex bringing something completely new to the very top of the British establishment. Yet from the moment their relationship became public, Prince Harry and former American actress Meghan Markle detected racial and sexist undertones in parts of the press. There were the references to the Duchess's rich and exotic DNA, how her family had gone from cotton slaves to royalty, and this piece suggesting the Los Angeles native was almost straight out of Compton, a reference to a song by NWA.
I just want to remind everybody that this article that Harry keeps referencing, straight out of Compton, came out of LA. The UK media did not write that piece.
The authors of these stories deny racism, but the couple saw underlying prejudice, which they articulated with this palace statement from 2016, calling out the racial undertones of comment pieces and the outright sexism and racism of social media trolls and web article comments.
From the very beginning, Harry and Meghan told us that this was the platform that they were going to be running on and using as their narrative. On November 8, 2016, this is when Harry chose to release this note to the world from Buckingham Palace. And if anybody remembers, back in 2016, November 8, 2016 was the day we had our election. So do I think this was coincidence? No, I don't, because the world found out Harry and Meghan were dating, and literally 7 days later, Harry feels forced that he has to release this note on Election Day in the United States, talking about sexism and misogyny, everything that Donald Trump was getting blamed for. No, I think that that was his way of, in a small way, of showing that I'm not tolerating sexism and misogyny, and I'm not tolerating a president who is all about that. Or at least at the time, that's what the media was repeating 24/7 about Donald Trump to get us to not vote for him.
What the regular members of the Royal Press Pack will tell you is that they're just doing their job, reporting the news without prejudice. And they actually do far more positive stories about Meghan than negative. The problem, they say, is when digital news sites pick up on their first-hand reporting and then sensationalise it. A typical example is the ongoing narrative that the Duchess of Sussex is at war with her sister-in-law, the Duchess of Cambridge. This is based on just one report in a respected newspaper that Meghan made Kate cry at a bridesmaid dress fitting just before last year's wedding, and even that story is disputed by the palace. The two women have endured constant comparisons.
Essentially, Kate is no deviation of the norm. She's very much the quintessential sort of British girl next door.
Where Kate's now celebrated for wearing an off-the-shoulder dress, Meghan is accused of breaking royal protocol. When Meghan wears dark nail polish, she breaks royal protocol again with vulgar fashion move. The comparisons are as awkward for Kate as they are for Meghan.
She's very much what you envisage when you think of the word princess, and frankly, she's white, whereas someone like Meghan is very much a deviation. She's foreign not just by being American, but she's got black heritage, she's a divorcee, she's just a very different type of person, and somebody that I don't think your average British member of the public sort of thinks of when they think of the word Duchess or royal family at all.
Being that Meghan has lied so much, I bet that Meghan created a lot of these stories to establish this polarity.
And I think so much of what I have seen play out is this idea of polarity, where if you love me, you don't have to hate her. And if you love her, you don't need to hate me. Mm-hmm.
A CNN royal source accepts the Duchesses aren't best friends. They may not hang out or call each other, but they are friendly and they text. Stories about a rift are just clickbait, the source adds. But it's that clickbait that online trolls are linking to and using against Meghan. On Twitter, we investigated the most commonly used anti-Meghan hashtags from the beginning of January to the middle of February. In total, we analysed 5,204 tweets and discovered 20 accounts were behind 70% of the posts. Their profile descriptions typically contain Meghan-related hashtags like Megxit, but also political hashtags such as Brexit and MAGA, Make America Great Again. We don't know how many people are behind the accounts, and we found no evidence of a coordinated right-wing campaign against the Duchess. But
Meghan Markle fits into this bigger idea of a West and the UK in decline.
So back in 2019, the people that were behind helping CNN was Hope, Not Hate. These are the people that allegedly ran this report. So already you can see that this was coordinated because the royal family website updated with its social media community guidelines, and 3 days later we had this investigation report presented. Obviously, this had been in the works for some time to gather the information, to do the analysis on 5,000 tweets, to whittle it down to just 20 accounts, and then film and put this piece together. Obviously, it took some time. There's no way that this could have been done in 3 days. So there was a calculated effort here in order to start this campaign now on all these trolls trolling Meghan. Poor Meghan.
And here it's symbolized by Meghan, who kind of corrupts this old institution of the Buckingham Palace.
CNN has been told that trolling escalated when the Duchess announced her pregnancy. That was at the beginning of a high-profile tour of Australia. Palace staff are having to spend more time deleting comments on their social media platforms, also blocking accounts and reporting abuses.
There's definitely sort of an unspoken sort of interest in what the baby will look like. There's been a lot of talk on Twitter, not just from racists, but also from people that are very pro-Meghan, about recessive genes, about whether the baby will have an afro, whether the baby will have its mother's nose. There's all these kind of coded conversations happening about what the baby will look like. And it sounds sort of really horrible to think, but a lot of people have sort of offered up the idea that the blacker the baby looks, the worse its treatment will be.
And there you have it, folks. This is where I believe Meghan Markle got the idea to accuse the royal family of questioning how dark her baby's skin was going to be. Here you have this journalist saying flat out that even people who are pro-Meghan fans were questioning whether the baby was going to have dark skin, have an afro, have her mother's nose. All these innocent comments and conversations that were happening, Meghan saw as racist, and she didn't like that. And I truly believe that deep down inside, Meghan is ashamed that she is partially black. That's my opinion. And I think that this was the real origin of this story, because Meghan and Harry did commission this.
Our royal source tells us they even had to pre-block the N-word on Instagram, plus emojis of knives and guns. It was celebrated as the wedding that united Britain and cemented the American alliance. But it also exposed divisions that a small group of haters are trying to exploit. The royal family are determined to starve them of that platform.
This was a flat-out lie fabricated by this political left-wing charity organization called Hope Not Hate. Take a listen to what Tommy Robinson had to say about this organization and who they really are within the UK.
Hope Not Hate is a so-called anti-fascist organisation who formed in 2004. They formed from a group and a magazine called Searchlight. Nick Lowles, who now leads Hope Not Hate, was a lead member of Searchlight. In 1984, Searchlight worked alongside Panorama to fraudulently edit footage which they were prosecuted or taken to court and sued for. They paid £1 million damages to Conservative MPs who they wrongfully edited footage to link them with far-right extremist groups. Hope Not Hate brand themselves as an anti-fascist organisation. They're there to tackle fascism. In reality, they label, slander and attack anyone who speaks out against open borders or against Islam. The worrying thing is they have a lot of influence. For example, all media outlets across the UK, across the world, take what they say as credible and they work hand in hand with them. From CNN, The Guardian, Huffington Post, The Independent, Sky News, Newsnight, Panorama, the Metro, the Sunday Times. They even advise the UN. They advise counter-terrorism. Just last year, Hope Not Hate were identified in a Swedish military report on left-wing extremist violence. It has been proven that Hope Not Hate exaggerated hate crime figures by 3,000%. Nothing they said after that point should ever have been taken as credible, let alone taken by journalists without checking anything and spread around the world to demonise and slander people and organisations. They play a key role in pressurising social media giants, whether it be with petitions or requests from MPs that they're working alongside with to say who's promoting hate. Not who's promoting hate that would breach laws in this country, but who needs silencing with their opinion. They're now teaching your children in schools about fascism. If we take a quote from their original spin doctor, Dan Hodges, from his quote you'll understand the tactics they use in this documentary. It was a no-holds-barred bare-knuckle PR. We used every dirty, underhand, low-down, unscrupulous trick in the book. These are quotes from their spin doctor, Joe Mulhall, who is a lead researcher for Hope Not Hate. He brags about days out with their BBC political reporters. Their relationship works hand in hand with the corrupt mainstream media. They do the reports, the media then use their ammunition and their labelling to attack people and organisations, to demonise them and slander them. In 2015, Joe Mulhall used the hashtag Antifa on several occasions. The reason why this is so relevant is when you understand who Antifa are. Antifa are an organisation that leading members of the American government have called to be prescribed as a terrorist organisation. They balaclava up, they mask up, and they violently attack people who they're told to attack, and organisations which are highlighted to them by groups and organisations like Hope Not Hate. They find out who you are, they contact your work, anyone who steps above the parapet. Hope Not Hate's goal is to silence them and stop them. This is about stopping free speech. This is about having people too scared to speak.
Now, doesn't that sound familiar?
I'm letting them stay because we're collecting. What we do is that we let their comments stay for as long as possible. We collect as much information through a third-party software as possible. And the ones we can contact their family members, we do. All of the ones we can contact their jobs, we do. Because they're bullying and harassing people online, specifically us. And the ones that we can file police reports about, we do. So please go on there. Please go on Facebook and check them out. It is awesome. So it's for me, and that's what happens. So that's why whenever we get overran by trolls, I laugh because I'm like, first of all, now you've given me all of your personal information, because the easiest way to get people's personal information is off of Facebook.
Facebook,
yeah. It's literally the easiest way to mine people's personal information. Because so many older people are on there, they're not very tech savvy. So they put all kinds of information about themselves, their grandkids, their son, where they went, where they retired from, where they live, them there. The only thing I probably can't get off of Facebook is their social security number. But if I put enough information together, I can get it if I wanted to.
During that time, Meghan was running this campaign to let the world know that she is being trolled. In April of 2019, ABC News, another left-wing media organization here in the United States, in alignment with the leftist regime, publishes this article about the Sussex Squad. In this article, they go ahead and feature a few of these squaddies, one of them named Free Peeper, showing what a kind and generous person they are supporting the Duchess. This one rambles on very nastily. You can read it for yourself, asking, or are you a Trump bot? Hurt that pig won't be invited? What have you done for homeless? Or how about this one about King Charles and Prince William, dated January 8th, 2020. Now, it is pretty clear that these trolls or bots or people that are sitting behind these accounts have a job to do. Back in 2017, this same account, Free Peeper, was not talking about Meghan Markle. No, they were talking about the Alabama Senate race, the one that Renee DiResta had involvement with. It is rumored that Renee DiResta has her own trolls online that she plays around with. That's a rumor, and so does Chris Krebs. I don't know This is her, but I wouldn't be surprised if she had involvement with Harry and Meghan, with the squad.
The marriage of Meghan Markle into the British royal family was celebrated as progress, a national triumph of diversity and inclusivity. But hidden behind the positivity, her arrival has also exposed an underbelly of unpleasant online abuse. The majority of the country proud to have her as their new Duchess, but her impact has revealed an uncomfortable truth about us too.
Literally less than a month after the CNN expose comes out, we have Sky News UK putting out this also special report on the trolling of Meghan Markle. Now, I'm sure at the time people really didn't know what they were looking at. In fact, nobody would suspect that Harry and Meghan were behind some type of campaign to make it look like Meghan was facing all this type of hate online. When you catch the very beginning of this so-called report and you look closer, you realize that what this journalist is doing is actually reading from a script that probably Meghan and Harry gave her. So it says here, I'm guessing, telling the journalist to lead with this, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram play host to multiple accounts dedicated to conspiracy-led and racist abuse of Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, with thousands of followers viewing the content shared daily, according to analysis by Storyful. Meanwhile, on fringe platforms such as 4chan, 8chan, and Gab, hate speech is frequently directed at Meghan, and online attacks on Meghan, her supporters, and journalists who cover the royals are orchestrated. Storyful has also tracked the development of talking points to support a conspiracy theory around Meghan's pregnancy.
A year ago, we saw a Duchess determined to do things differently.
We got to get you all married.
We've watched her adjust to this more traditional life. Through her charity projects, we've seen more than just a hint of the former actress.
Like these women, I'm passionate about food and cooking as a way of strengthening communities.
And a woman not afraid to break away from the norm.
Thank you.
Throughout, Prince Harry has been there for support, as Meghan has attracted incredible levels of adoration, but also plenty of negative press. Just months into her life as a royal, unattributed briefings from inside the palace and negative headlines started to appear. The tone had shifted. So when was it that you first met Meghan?
Well, I met her when I was organising the Global Gift Gala.
PR consultant Nick Eade worked with Meghan on a charity event in London before she met Harry. He thinks the actress turned Duchess could be lost in translation.
She's very passionate. Listen, when you're ambitious, you want to do the best, and you want to be the best, and you want to get to the best you can be. I mean, you know, this is somebody who has just entered the royal family, who is probably working quadruply as hard as she was when she's learning scripts for Suits. So she's actually put herself in a position where it's not an easy life. You know, there's far more easy things to do than this.
Her showbiz baby shower in New York really split opinion, as some felt it was too flashy for a member of the monarchy.
This is her life, you know, her life has been as a celebrity for many more years than she has been a princess. Yeah. So actually for her, and for everybody else, this is just normal life.
The problem is there is a big difference between her celebrity and royal life, with everything that she does now being picked over by a much bigger international audience.
Actually, do you have a Sharpie marker? Should we go get you one? I have an idea. Okay.
Her decision to write on bananas that would be given to sex workers in Bristol was one of those moments that attracted as much criticism as praise, especially on social media.
A member of the royal family who isn't from this country, who isn't from their same cultural group, you know, we should be much more accepting and welcome that. And the royal family is engaging and changing as the world is. I do think it's appalling, some of it, and should be stopped.
Modernisers are usually divisive figures, especially within the British royal family. But Meghan's natural Americanisms...
There is no better time than to really continue to shine a light on women feeling empowered.
Her tendency to break with royal tradition, and for some even her ethnicity, have led to a sinister trend of abuse emerging online. Search on any of the big social media platforms and you will find millions of posts about the royals. Right now, with their baby on the way, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are the biggest hits. But Meghan has also become the main target for trolls. To understand the lows as well as the highs of Meghan's new role, we asked the experts at Storyful, a social media research agency, to dig deeper into this trend of online abuse.
So our tools allow us to observe and analyse across multiple platforms.
By analysing the most derogatory terms, they uncovered thousands of offensive posts on mainstream social media and more secretive fringe platforms. Social media platforms have become this virtual soapbox where people can more widely share their views about the monarchy. While other members of the royal family are certainly not immune from criticism, I've never seen it become so vicious and personal as it does around the Duchess of Sussex.
There were multiple pages and profiles across mainstream platforms like Facebook, like YouTube, like Twitter, Instagram, all seemingly set up with the single purpose or the major purpose of abusing Meghan Markle, of making false claims about her, of maligning her character, and claiming that she was a grifter who had gotten her way into the royal family by way of hoaxes.
These were among the 20 most prolific Twitter accounts that use popular abusive terms like Maggot Markle and Megxit.
You can see some of the more common words being used in these conversations are things like moon bump, Charlotte and Duchess, Duchess of Deception.
A few of the accounts are from overseas, but the majority are based right here in the UK, using offensive hashtags about her race and claiming she's a social climber. Our report shows some of these accounts have thousands of followers.
There are a lot of people who question her bona fides, who question her legitimacy. There's all sorts of racist commentary about Markle, and thereafter people seem to be directed to the private groups where there's the potential for more extreme discussion.
Our research also showed that nearly a quarter of tweets mentioning Meghan contain angry content, and that's compared to only 3% of tweets referencing the Duchess of Cambridge. Type in Meghan or Duchess of Sussex and the extent of the racist abuse is painfully clear. Our research found multiple posts featuring pictures of bananas and monkeys in reference to her mixed-race heritage. And shockingly, her unborn child is also the subject of racist abuse, with malicious posts about the baby's ethnicity.
I'd like to point out that this particular user is a bot, and how convenient that the day after the royal family puts up their social media community guidelines, this post comes out. Do I think there's a possibility that Meghan and Harry got a few bots and started typing out some racist shit? Yeah, I do. Because when you look at accounts with real people behind it, they're not saying anything racist. They're just questioning Meghan's moon bump.
Around her pregnancy, with hashtags like moon bump and Meghan Markle is not pregnant.
Thank you so much.
So explain to me, how are those hashtags racist?
Videos like this one that I posted on Twitter from International Women's Day.
She's a real person. Wow. So crazy.
Used to apparently confirm that her baby bump isn't real.
Let's look at this post a little closer. The person writes, Meg, we know that you're not actually pregnant. Did you think you could fool anyone with this jelly belly of yours? No truly pregnant woman has a giant ball bearing rolling around under her dress. Why don't you just come clean and let everyone know what a fraud and liar you are? Does anybody see racism here? You know, I mean, if Meghan truly wanted to put this to bed, she could sue everybody saying that her belly is not real. Why hasn't she sued anyone?
Hi, Meghan, how are you feeling? But was this ongoing scrutiny of her and her ethnicity always inevitable? It was something that Meghan acknowledged when they got engaged.
Of course, it's disheartening. You know, it's a shame that that is the climate in this world, to focus that much on that, or that would be discriminatory in that sense. But I think...
Liar. That was the playbook from the very beginning. You made it about race, Meghan. You are the one that made us think about it. This definitely was a fabricated campaign. Looking back at the organizations that were involved in the very beginning, it now starts to fit together. And it just so happened about 2 days ago, The Spectator wrote this article about Hope Not for Hate. And it really is about the dirty tactics that they use to silence democratic dissent. And looking into this organization and realizing that they were in on this with Meghan and Harry in 2019. And, I want to go ahead and share some of my thoughts in the research that I've done about this organization. So, a quick recap as to what was said earlier by Tommy Robinson. Hope Not Hate presents itself as a watchdog against hate, but in reality, it's an intelligence cutout in NGO clothing. Born from the old Searchlight Network with its well-documented ties to British intelligence, Hope Not Hate inherited not only the mailing lists and files, but the methods. I think one thing that should be understood here is that all roads lead back to Obama. Turns out Nick Lowles, who was the founder of Hope Not Hate, traveled to the U.S. to work alongside the Obama campaign. Second term. Miranda Barbeau. Anyway, I digress. Nick Lowles is a sleazeball. But the money trail exposes the actual machine. Hope Not Hate is sustained by familiar British philanthropic foundations like Hamlin, Cadbury, but its real alignment comes through Ariadne, a donor consortium that links European funders to globalist billionaires. Within that circle sits Omidar's network, which includes Luminate, alongside Open Society and Rockefeller, all driving a shared agenda under the banner of information integrity. So this Ariadne network or consortium, the briefings and toolkits actually shape what gets funded, what actually gets amplified, and what governments are told. Hope Not Hate doesn't need a direct Omidar grant. It is carried by a tide of donor consensus that makes sure every NGO in the network sings the same tune. This was the backdrop in 2019 when Harry and Meghan suddenly became the center of an online hate panic, or fabricated hate panic. Newspapers reported that Hope Not Hate analysis had found just a few dozen accounts responsible for the bulk of anti-Meghan tweets. The claims were amplified, but never interrogated, just like what they did with Bot Sentinel. When Bot Sentinel came around, another outfit operating in the same orbit with a report that recycled thin numbers into a dramatic story of trolling and racism. The evidence was never there. What existed were ordinary critics, many of them conservatives like myself, who disliked Meghan for her behavior. They were falsely branded as racists and extremists. Lives were definitely disrupted, accounts were suspended, and reputations definitely were destroyed. Meanwhile, the real organized harassment came from the Sussex squad. They mobilized in lockstep, reporting, doxing, and harassing critics while presenting themselves as defenders of the Duchess. Their methods resembled the Antifa swarming tactics already familiar to Hope Not Hate, and their timing was no coincidence. They appeared precisely as Meghan went public with claims of victimhood. The story of being trolled was, at best, exaggerated, at worst, fabricated. But it provided the perfect cover for an online army to silence dissent. And my friends, this is what we all experienced and witnessed. And when I look at the Crown's involvement, they had every incentive to let this story run. By recasting criticism of Meghan as racist hate, the monarchy insulates itself from deeper critique. Sarah Latham, Meghan's PR chief in 2019 and a figure with long ties to Labour and the Clintons, understood how to weaponize NGO reports and media narratives, because literally that was her job. Her hand is not proven, but the alignment is so obvious. And I do really think that they were preparing to come to the United States with this narrative in which we saw Harry carry it over into that interview that he did with Wired magazine in 2021. I mean, why is it that we never bring up or talk about Meghan and Harry hiring Michelle Obama's ex-press chief? I mean, does anybody know what this person was doing for Harry and Meghan to receive $110,000? You know, looking back at all of this, everything was political. I mean, you can't say that it's not, considering all the organizations that Harry and Meghan have partnered with, aligned with. And that's just what we know of. You know, in my honest opinion, I think the people that have been backing Harry and Meghan this whole entire time, I think is Pierre Omidyar. Because when you look at the various causes that Meghan and Harry support and the funders of these projects, Omidyar Illuminate keeps coming up. Not only do they donate to Archwell, but they were sponsors during the Columbia faux royal trip. They're also partners in this Responsible Youth Tech Power Fund. Yeah, so to close this out, what we see that has emerged is not charity. It really is a constructed influence system that we have going on here. From Omidyar's Illuminate to Soros's Open Society Foundations, from Hope Not Hate to global counter-disinformation projects, the same financial arteries pump resources and legitimacy into a movement to reshape how we talk, how we argue, how we express, and how we interact with one another. You know, and Harry and Meghan, thanks to them and their sloppiness, have shown us how everything really connects together and what the larger agenda is. And that is to maintain control and power. It's as simple as that. And that's what these globalists are desperately trying to do. You have to understand the way we communicate with one another and access information has changed since the advent of the internet, and particularly since the rise of social media. Our online communication has created what the United Nations calls the infosphere. This infosphere has become so massive that governments around the world are desperate to control our access to the information it contains. And the reason why they have such a problem with free speech and freedom of thought is because for many decades, governments have relied on the legacy media as the so-called gatekeepers of information and news. But you see, now that anyone can create and disseminate information, the state and its gatekeepers are now struggling to compete, and they are losing their grasp on their power. The fact that we, the people, can now communicate online and share ideas and information between ourselves has been identified as a global threat to this one world utopia that they have been driving us towards for Agenda 2030. Yeah, there's a desperation to keep it together. We're seeing a lot of panic go on and driving the population in some of these Western countries into this digital surveillance ID trap. You know, I hope people are starting to realize that while we've been distracted by the bullshit and lies that Harry and Meghan have been feeding us these past 6 years, that we recognize that it was all intentional. They came here with an agenda to do this, and it didn't work out the way that they thought it would. And I think they are really trying to figure out what they're going to do next, because I don't think any of this turned out the way that they thought it would. That's just my opinion. But what do you guys think? Definitely let me know your thoughts below. As always, I will be back with more content. But until then, please be safe, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Such a fraud.